Ever since the end of Wrath of the Lich King Classic, a lot of players were asking what exactly comes next. People have been begging for a quote-unquote Classic Plus since at least 2023, and we did almost get an answer to that question when Blizzard revealed Season of Discovery in 2023, but clearly that was not enough for players because at this point, Season of Discovery is over and people are still demanding a true World of Warcraft Classic Plus. This conversation has once again returned to the forefront because Blizzard is now striking down private servers for creating their own Classic Plus. But what exactly is Classic Plus? What do players even want? Everybody certainly has input on this topic, and one thing's for certain, there is definitely demand for something of this nature. But the question is, are the obstacles that face a potential Classic Plus too great for the product to actually succeed? That is exactly what we're going to discuss in today's video, so let's start off with the first topic. World of Warcraft Season of Discovery is kind of like a gift and a curse for Classic Plus. At its very core, it was a vanilla WoW experience with modifications. During its initial Phase 1 launch, Season of Discovery was actually extremely popular because people really did consider it to be a Classic Plus experience. During its initial release in its first 2 phases, Season of Discovery was wildly successful. So what does this mean? It only reinforces the belief that there is a high demand for a modified Classic WoW experience. But the problem with the Season of Discovery experience is that it experienced massive drop-offs and Blizzard failed to retain their player base. A lot of this can be considered self-inflicted, which in turn gives players reasons to believe that maybe they can't trust Blizzard to actually deliver a Classic Plus. I'd say the best example of this was in Phase 3 when they introduced Nightmare Incursions, which kind of just feels antithetical to what Classic WoW is even about. So you have to ask yourself the question, does the team who's developing this game even understand what made Classic great in the first place? Nightmare Incursions were ways to basically forego the leveling process. And for those of you who played Classic WoW over the years, obviously you understand that the 1 to 60 journey is actually part of the game as opposed to just trying to rush the end game like retail. Retail WoW is a game that's more based off of the end game experience, and certainly it's more of a robust end game experience. But the best part about Classic WoW is that the game starts at level 1 as opposed to level 80. So it brings us back to the central point. Does this modern Blizzard team have what it takes to actually create World of Warcraft Classic Plus and make it good? Things like this and just how low the player count dropped during Season of Discovery are definitely causes for concern. But also, I said it's a gift as well, because if you think about it, Season of Discovery has the plausible deniability due to the fact that, you could say it's a testing ground for what would work and what wouldn't work in Classic Plus. So now that they have the experience of failure as well as some success, possibly this could be their greatest asset. Because not for nothing, the content did get better with each successive phase, and they even released a full brand new raid and a couple of new dungeons along the way. And the content was received pretty well, but at the end of the day, they were not able to ever recapture a fraction of the player base they were able to capture during the beginning of Season of Discovery. The thing about the internet and social media is that you are fighting and scrapping for every second of people's attention. So the second you lose it, you just may never get it back. So it's important that we're not experimenting and throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks like they did in Season of Discovery, and instead having a full-blown roadmap that is competent and is ready to retain a large player base for a long time. Right out of the gate. Not on the 4th patch or the 5th patch, but from patch number 1, have all this stuff mapped out, ready to go. Here's the next question that I kind of want everyone to ask themselves, and I would love to hear exactly what your opinion about this is down below in the comments. What exactly is Classic Plus? Is it World of Warcraft Classic that adopts more elements from retail? Is it World of Warcraft Classic where they just add a couple of extra progressive raid tiers? Kind of like Season of Discovery in a way, with just new abilities and class balancing, etc. Is it World of Warcraft Classic where you just modify the leveling experience and make some new zones and some new quests? Is it something that's meant to be the next big live service project that eventually takes over retail or kind of acts as a retail replacement like Old School RuneScape did to RuneScape 3? That's kind of the big question that we need to ask ourselves. Is Classic Plus something that's going to live on forever, or is it going to be this like temporary game mode kind of like Season of Discovery was? To me personally, I would love to see Classic Plus have some staying power. As someone who's a big Old School RuneScape fan, I love that that game is still going strong to this day. We have some idea for what Blizzard wants to do with Classic Plus. Some of the things that they did in a recent poll said, would they put playable shamans on the Alliance side? Would they add collections to the game, account-wide collections, 1v1 duel arenas, new player character models, in-game events, pet battles, leveling profession improvements, new class abilities and spells, honor rewards redesign, the WoW token, of course they're going to probably put that in a classic WoW plus, class talent adjustments, account-wide perks and progression system, playable high elves, revisiting known but unexplored areas, player housing, achievements, cross-realm play, honor system redesign, war mode, brand new zones, 20-player raids, 40-player raids, graphical improvements to lighting, shadows, and surface reflections, new trade skills, graphical texture improvements and resolution upgrade, new battlegrounds, new race and class combinations, new class, 10-player raids, cross-realm guilds, transmog, and player paladins on the horde side. So these are all ideas that they want to see what the community's feedback would be on them. Doesn't necessarily mean that all of them will make it into the game. Based off of the fact that Blizzard has released this poll, and in addition to the fact that they are taking down private servers, it seems like it's all but inevitable at some point in time, maybe within the next 2 or 3 years, we will see some form of a Classic Plus. But according to the Blizzard poll, it kind of just seems like they're adding retail features to World of Warcraft Classic. Retail is in some pockets of the WoW community, like the Classic Andy side, some people that haven't even touched retail before. Retail is kind of like this dirty word, right? It's like, oh, retail WoW, the one where you level up in 5 seconds and everything's easy. That's not necessarily the case if you've actually played retail and you've played Mythic Plus, you've played some Mythic rating. It's actually a lot more complex to that, and there is some real staying power to retail WoW's endgame, as opposed to Classic where there is a lot of raid logging. So retail WoW is not this like irredeemable trash where we need to throw everything about it into the garbage. I think there are some features from retail that can make it into Classic that would be good. You know, obviously adding things like the arena system, I don't really see this as a negative for WoW Classic. Like for Classic Plus to have this long-term health and success, if that's the route that they're choosing to go, as opposed to like the seasonal kind of thing that we're doing for retail, they're going to need to add some additional endgame content for sure. I think the most important thing that they should do when they're adding features into the game is just kind of keep it within the spirit of what Classic WoW truly is. Because yes, there are some redeeming qualities about retail, but ultimately when I'm playing retail WoW, it doesn't feel like I'm playing World of Warcraft. It feels like this alien experience. It doesn't feel like the same Azeroth that I once knew and loved. So they would have to add some features to give this game some staying power, but ultimately it does seem kind of all over the place and no one really knows exactly what Classic Plus should be. And I bet if you asked 100 people, almost all 100 of them would have some different variation of what they think the ideal Classic Plus should be. So until we figure out what Classic Plus even is or what it means and what it's defined as, it's going to continue to be a hurdle for the dev team to create the best experience possible. So during the summer of 2025, if you were tapped into the MMORPG scene, you may have seen the debates about Old School RuneScape versus World of Warcraft. A lot of World of Warcraft content creators switched over to Old School RuneScape during the summer and kind of discovered the big glaring problem that World of Warcraft kind of has inherently. And it's solely based off of the progression system of OSRS as opposed to the progression system of World of Warcraft. Old School RuneScape at this point is kind of like an anomaly. The MMO genre has been on the decline for a very, very long time, but OSRS is a game that's kind of breaking that mold. Now, this is certainly a complex subject that can't really be summarized in a couple of minutes. Like, you could talk about this for hours. But I think out of all the reasons why Old School RuneScape is growing while other MMOs are failing is because Old School RuneScape embraces evergreen content. But most importantly, your progress in OSRS is never invalidated. It has something called horizontal progression. I'm sure you guys have heard of this term before. Content that was released 15 years ago in Old School RuneScape is still relevant to this day. You can still farm that content. You can still use that gear because the progression system allows for this replayability within the game. The concept of raid logging does not exist in Old School RuneScape. The game doesn't just come to a complete halt for you. When you log on RuneScape, there's always something to do. There's always a goal to achieve and work towards. If you take a break and you come back, your progress will still remain. Simply put, the game is designed to have a lot more staying power. It's like death by 1,000 jabs. World of Warcraft in the early years, with the heavy punches, with the knockout punch, Old School RuneScape just kept throwing jabs, keeping its game alive, keeping the content alive, and was able to reverse the trend of MMOs dying. And whether or not you think World of Warcraft is a better game is immaterial to the argument, because at the end of the day, RuneScape is the only game right now that is able to actively grow a player base. It's not as simple as saying, yeah, throw evergreen content in World of Warcraft. I feel like this is something that's going to definitely take some scheming and planning, because World of Warcraft and RuneScape are fundamentally different games. The way they play, it's just not even comparable. So is the way that World of Warcraft is constructed and built from the ground up? Is it a game that actually allows for horizontal progression? I mean, the closest thing that we got to it actually was vanilla World of Warcraft. The raiding content in WoW Classic is actually a lot more evergreen than how retail WoW is currently constructed, where it's season by season, and once the season's over, the other content is completely invalidated. World of Warcraft at this point is almost like an ARPG in the sense that like it's seasonal progression for the loot, and then once you reset the season, you start all over again. World of Warcraft Classic, there's still some value in doing molten core runs in phase 4 or 5. Is WoW Classic Plus, is this going to be something that goes beyond level 60? Is it going to go to level 70, level 80? At what point in time do the arguments about keeping content evergreen eventually become a problem? If we go to a phase 7, a phase 8, or a phase 9 with the rating tiers, at what point are we invalidating the previous tiers? At what point is the power creep going to be too much? Are we going to have to raise the level cap? And then at that point, it's the World of Warcraft cycle all over again. Maybe the game is just simply not designed to have that horizontal progression, and that's okay. The reason why World of Warcraft was able to get away with this for so long is because it was the king of the genre. It was like our second life. When World of Warcraft got a new update that, you know, kind of seemingly invalidated our progress, it didn't matter. It's because the place that we called home was getting just more things to do in it. So we didn't think of it like that. We didn't think about the long-term ramifications and the long-term health of maybe this like house of cards that the game was built on. Due to the fact that World of Warcraft was an online game and it was novel at the time, once that novelty wore off and World of Warcraft became just another game and it had to actually compete with the ever-expanding attention market of TikTok and social media, other video games that also featured online play, these questions started to become more and more relevant. Once the magic went away, the novelty wore off, and then we all got older, game design choices started to come into question. What I personally want from World of Warcraft Classic Plus is something more akin to Old School RuneScape with that evergreen content. I just don't know how they're going to implement that. I don't get paid to do that. It's not my job, but that is something that I want. A true, viable, ongoing alternative to retail is something that I would personally love. Maybe it's too much to ask for. Maybe it's something that can never be achieved. If you guys have good ideas for that, I would love to hear what they are down below in the comments, and I'm sure the dev team would probably like to know that too. This is definitely a big problem that I foresee, and it's just like this ever-growing treadmill of power creep. And that's something that Blizzard's gonna have to figure out if they want WoW Classic Plus to actually succeed or just fade away and become a fad. As it currently stands, the World of Warcraft player base is pretty divided. If you think about it, we have Classic Era, we have Anniversary servers, which are going to progress into TBC. We have Hardcore WoW, we have Retail WoW, and I almost forgot because there's so many versions, we also have Mists of Pandaria Classic. I think there's a couple of questions that Blizzard will have to answer within the upcoming years. The first and foremost is, what are they going to do after TBC Anniversary? Is it going to just progress into Wrath of the Lich King? The second question I think they're going to have to ask themselves is, what happens after Mists of Pandaria Classic? I think all signs are pointing towards Blizzard at least getting up until Legion. So that means we're probably going to have to slog through Warlords of Draenor as well. I think there's a serious question for what they're going to have to do with these two versions of Classic and what the future holds for them before they address Classic Plus, which probably won't be here for a while. This is just my opinion, but I do think that splitting your player base up 5 different ways is not really a recipe for success. I think in order for Classic Plus to truly be successful, there needs to be a true dedicated dev team with a true vision that needs to be executed fully and faithfully, with as many resources as possible that they can dump into it to make sure that it's not half-assed.